Hello and welcome to Post to Post, the channel where we discuss all things hockey and all teams. And some big news broke the other day. Jack Eichel made the comment that he won't be back in Buffalo, or he doesn't want to extend his contract after his final year. And then the day after, even bigger news broke. Bylsma got fired. Murray got fired. How do you feel about this?
Yeah, this one is really interesting because news broke from various sources that Eichel apparently claimed that if Bylsma was still the head coach, he wasn't going to re-sign with Buffalo after his entry-level contract was up, which would be at the end of next season. So a lot of people kind of took that and run with it because Eichel, since he came into the NHL, has always been kind of slated as a guy that has a bit of an ego problem. I definitely see some truth in that based on past interactions he's had with the media, or as well his whole process of being drafted into the NHL. Because remember, for a while he kind of went, franchise to franchise, scouting, so on and so forth, because he wasn't sure if he wanted to turn pro yet.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Like, are you kidding me? Like, come on. It's the whole reason people continue through their hockey careers to reach the NHL. That is the pinnacle of pinnacles. You want to play in the NHL. And to say that, well, I'm not sure if I want to turn pro yet. Well, that's not necessarily up for you to decide. That's up for to the team that drafts you, and whether or not they think you should be sent down for the first year in order to develop more, which happens with a lot of players. But that's not up to you to decide. So he has since spoke out and said that he did not say those things, and they were just, completely false. But I honestly believe there is some truth to it, just because of the type of guy he is. He really thinks he's something, that Eichel. But for them to instantly fire Bylsma and Murray, was it even hours after this apparently broke? I mean, that speaks volumes. And to me, it kind of just raises more flags to say this is all true. And at the same time, if it is 100% true and Eichel did say these things, who the hell's running this team? Is it Eichel?
Apparently the owner sat down with his wife to discuss what they should do.
Yep.
And you could blame so many people here. Do you blame Eichel for Bylsma and Murray getting fired? Do you blame Bylsma and Murray because there were other players on the team, like O'Reilly was pretty outspoken near the end of the year that he was not impressed with how things went down. And I think there was maybe one more Sabres player who didn't have very nice things to say about maybe the coaching staff or management.
Yeah, so I know Eichel did say some things on the media day at the end of the season. Yeah. He did say, specifically that they weren't happy with a lot of, key areas within the organization. I don't think he strictly pointed the finger and said the coach or the GM, but
everybody knew.
Yeah, areas in the organization. Now, if you say something like that, you're not really talking about your teammates. But I look at this and I think, okay, here's a young guy who is acting out beyond his years. Now, if this was a veteran of 20 years, I would give them a little bit of respect if they are going to say something, specifically toward the coach. If they've been around for like if Shane Doan were to speak out, right? I'd listen to a player like that, or a Yager, that type of thing.
Shane Doan could probably coach the team himself.
But when you got a guy who's only been in the league 2 years and not even 2 full years because of injuries, that just doesn't come off right at all. And with ownership kind of stepping in and doing something, a mere day even after this accusation that Eichel said these things, that looks terrible. And if ownership was thinking of firing Murray and Bylsma, man, you should have waited, because this just kind of opened a whole new can of worms for Buffalo and the entire franchise and city and so on by them kind of jumping the gun and doing this. Just after this Eichel story broke. It looks terrible. And these owners have been kind of accused of being fans more than owners and kind of having their hand in things a little too much in Buffalo. And that's kind of an ongoing story too.
Yeah, and I know, I shouldn't say I know, I've read from a lot of sources and I've heard from a lot of sources that the team was not happy with Bylsma. They didn't like playing for him. So I'm sure it's more than the 3 people who were outspoken. Maybe it is the whole team. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know what goes on in the dressing room, but I will say that I don't think Murray should have got fired. I think he made some brilliant moves. Him bringing in O'Reilly was great. Him bringing in Kane was great. Kane's salary based on his play this year, I think, was pretty respectable. Eichel, they can't be. He drafted Eichel, so you can't be too upset there. But I think that the owners made the only decision they could make. Do you keep Bylsma and Murray, or do you keep Eichel, someone who's going to be there for potentially 20 years? Bylsma and Murray aren't going to be there for 20 years, so I think they made the only decision that they could make.
Well, when you have a guy with the talent of Eichel, those are a lot harder to come by compared to a coach and a GM, right? It would be almost as if a guy the caliber, well, not the caliber of McDavid, but I mean, McDavid's hands down the best player Edmonton has. Eichel, to me, is the best player Buffalo has. So if your best player speaks out and says, hey, I'm not happy with the coach, what do? It puts you in a really, really tough position. It really does. And, I don't really understand how the players could be unhappy with a guy like Bylsma, because when he was in Pittsburgh, man, the players loved him. And even when they fired him, man, that was a huge thing. And they had interviews with all the players and how sad they were that he was gone, because he was a real players coach. He was very personal with all the players, and he understood them in all their unique ways, because nobody's the same, right? So I don't really understand that accusation of them not liking him, because to me, he's a great coach. He's an awesome guy and just a real players coach.
Do you think maybe he wasn't a player's coach in Buffalo? Like I got fired from Pittsburgh.
Yep.
I obviously was doing something wrong. Maybe I was too buddy with everyone. Maybe I should be a little more hardcore. Do you think that he took that approach?
Well, it's almost, to me, a little tough, because you look at a guy like Evander Kane and now Eichel. To me, these are two of the biggest egos in the NHL, next to a guy like PK Subban.
I also got Leonard, who has a bit of an attitude.
Yeah, Leonard as well. And that's another issue with Buffalo this year. Goaltending was just not good enough for them down the stretch. So that's another reason why they didn't make the playoffs. And I actually pegged Buffalo to make the playoffs this year, based on changes that they made. Again, that old saying, on paper, they look like a really good team. They do.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I think Leonard played pretty well. His statistics were pretty good. I think his problem was consistency. He led in some timely goals in some very important games down the stretch, like you said. But
Eichel being out for the duration he was definitely didn't help them as well. But you can tell he's a competitive guy. He wants to win. Nobody likes missing the playoffs and having to sit on their couch at home and watch everybody else go after a Stanley Cup. You obviously hate it.
He also missed a $2 million bonus as well, so I'm sure he wasn't.
That
had something to do with his frustrations.
But hey, if he's broke right now and was dependent on that $2 million, I have no sympathy for you, because you got more money than me.
You could kind of compare him to his skill level and maybe his cockiness to Laine a little bit. So if Winnipeg was in the same situation, what do they do?
Yeah, it's to the point where the coach is more expendable than the player, because if they said, well, hey, Bylsma is our guy, we're staying with Bylsma, and he says, okay, well, when my entry level contract is up, I'm out of here. How do you replace a guy like that? It's not so easy, because Eichel is a phenomenal talent, but to me, his ego really needs to be put in check. It's almost out of control.
So what if this happened in Toronto? Matthews or Babcock? Who stays and who goes?
Well, Babcock is arguably the best coach in the NHL. And I think they would be foolish to let him go, because look what Toronto has done under Babcock already. And look what they're still doing, because, hey, they're still in the thick of things right now in their series with Washington. They could possibly upset the Washington Capitals. And I think a lot of it is due to Babcock and how he's coaching these young kids.
Do you think Toronto would be a stronger team with Babcock and without Matthews, or with Matthews and without Babcock?
I think they would be stronger with Babcock.
I think they would be stronger with Matthews,
because Babcock is that good of a coach, and I have so much respect for him. I mean, come on, he was part of those 20 plus straight years, of course he wasn't there for all of them, but with Detroit, and ultimately winning the cup in 08 and then going right back to the final in 09. I mean, Babcock had a hand in a lot of this. He's an amazing coach.
I think he's a very good coach, but I think he's a little overrated.
Really?
Yeah, that's a bold statement to make, and I might get.
He's got Olympic gold too.
I know. I don't know what it is about him. I just get the vibe that he's just a little overrated. I don't dislike him. I'm still saying he's an amazing coach. He's a very, very good coach.
I think he's one of the most dedicated coaches too. They did a bit of a video on him once where they showed like his daily routines, and I don't know if any coach goes through the extent of what he does, spending multiple hours every day, spending time, looking at videos with the goal coaches and so on and so forth, just to kind of build up for the next game. His attention to detail is through the roof.
I have a funny, not really a funny story, but maybe I'm not remembering this correctly, but my dad was out on business somewhere in some city, and he was in a park sitting on a bench, and all of a sudden Babcock runs by, go for a morning run. He just ran by him. I can't remember what city he was
I would have ran after him. I really would have. Babcock, whoa, yeah, if you scream that running behind him, people might get the wrong idea.
Yeah.
He kind of has a bad word at the end of his name there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. If someone didn't know who he was. Then...
Oh my God, yeah, someone didn't know. Oh my God, there's a crazy person running behind you screaming something very horrible. Might not go over so well. But yeah, I really think Buffalo has a problem on their hands. Yeah. And now the question is, who do they hire?
Yeah, who do they hire? And do you think they should have kept one of the two? Or do you think getting rid of the two once was...
I think if they were really going to kind of jump on the theory of getting rid of the coach or getting rid of the GM, I think sadly both had to go, in my opinion. To me, Buffalo underachieved. I really think they should have achieved more this year. And to me, you can't really put the blame on a single person.
For me, I would just choose the coach. I think Bylsma should have been fired. I think Murray should have stayed. I really don't think it was Murray's fault. That's just an opinion of one man, but I don't know. It's a tough situation. I feel bad for the Buffalo fans because it's been so long that they've had to deal with this bullshit. Yeah. And, they have some bright things come in like Kane and O'Reilly and Eichel. And, the Bylsma signing at the time was huge for Buffalo.
It was.
There's a lot of excitement in the Buffalo fan base. And now they're kind of back to square one where they're like, my God.
Did Bylsma really get a fair shot? That's almost a little debatable.
Was it 2 years or 3?
Yeah, it was 2.
So
it was 2.
This was his second year, and this is Babcock's second year.
Yep.
And you could see what Babcock did with Toronto.
You can, that's for sure. But again, if I were Buffalo, Evander Kane, gone. That guy's got a huge ego problem, and to me, he's just... negativity in the dressing room based on everything that he brings. I would not want him in my organization. And Eichel, if all this stuff is true and continues to carry on, he would be number 2 that I wouldn't want in my organization. Because you need to leave the hockey decisions up to those who are in the position for the hockey decisions. Players don't run the team. Management runs the team. Yep. And it's a trickle-down effect. You can't have a kid at 20, I classify him as a kid, he's 20, right? You can't have him dictating the terms of how and when he's going to play for your franchise. That is ridiculous.
It's got hints of Lindros a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of does, and I wouldn't stand for it. And also, the ownership in Buffalo has to stop putting their hand into all decisions and leave those decisions up to your general manager and so on. Because what's the point of having a general manager if you're going to kind of contradict and so on? Be an owner, right? Be an owner first, not managing that team.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm just going to close this by asking you a question. Does Buffalo do better or worse next year?
I think they're going to do the same. I think they're going to miss the playoffs unless they drastically overhaul that lineup. It is possible, but right now they don't have a GM. They don't have a head coach. So as of now, I can only go on what they got, and I'm going to say they even miss the playoffs next year. However, they could hire a new coach and a new GM within the next week or two and then make a big splash during free agency. You never know.
Yeah, we don't agree on everything, but I'll agree with you here. I think they stay basically about the same next year, but we'll leave it at that. We definitely want to know what you guys think of the situation. We know that we have some viewers who are Buffalo fans, so if that's you, comment and let us know how you feel about the situation. Do you hate Eichel now because he get rid of the coach and GM, or are you happy because you love Eichel and Bylsma and Murray were the problem? How do you feel? Definitely let us know in the comments below. If this is your first video, we hope you hit the subscribe button. We're making all kinds of videos here. And if you like this video, hit that like button too. That always helps. And until the next video, adios.